Hello, welcome to CubsPS Plus, the Northside Numbers Game, a weekly podcast that dives headfirst into the analysis of hot topics driving Chicago Cubs baseball. I'm your host, Mike Waller, lifelong Cub fan, full-time baseball stat nerd, and sometime youth baseball coach. CubsPS Plus is part of the Bleacher Bunch Productions on the Fans First Sports Network, an exciting and expanding group of shows that includes the Bleacher Bunch, the Santo Show, Cup of Cubby Blue, Baseball Rabbit Hole, and Bricks Behind the Ivy. The Bleacher Bunch feed is available wherever it is you get your podcasts, and CubsPS Plus is always available ad-free to Bleacher Bunch Patreon supporters at patreon.com/BleacherBunch, where you can support the show and always find a variety of benefits for as little as $1 a month. In addition to the podcast feeds, you can also find me on Twitter or X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube, all at CubsPS Plus. A spin on the baseball metric, OPS Plus. Love the pod or hate it? Please drop a review wherever it is you find your podcast. If you've done that, thank you so much. Maybe you can share this episode with a friend. It's June 19th. The Cubs are 45-28 and have the best record in the National League. This team is really exciting. But to go all Reggie Jackson, who's the straw that stirs the drink? Let's discuss. Are you ready? I'm ready. Here we go. Welcome to episode 110. This is the point where I pull out a stat or point out a player and tie it back to 110, the episode number. I'm going to do a double on this one. I was not doing the jersey number thing the first time through. So this is the Ron Santo episode of this podcast. Number 10, always and forever. And we're going to go 110 because I want to talk about how this team is exciting. This team is so exciting. This team is constantly creating chaos. And the biggest chaos agent, as I alluded to in the open, who's the straw that stirs the drink so far, it's been Crow-Armstrong. And PCA is off to a tremendous start. And I'm going to use 110 because that's his FanGraph projection coming into the season was for him to have a 110 WRC+. And heading into the season, I would have been absolutely thrilled with that. We already knew from last year that PCA can play incredible defense. He's super fast, steals bases, just makes a lot of things happen. And if he could even hit at a league average level or slightly above, it's a guy with a future 10-year plus all-star. He's 23 years old right now. Started in the majors at 22. There's just so much there that if he hits it all, he's an amazing player because his defensive abilities and his speed give you such a high floor. So 110 WRC plus, and so far this season, he's just tearing it up. He's 137. Let's just look at it. I talked about it in Cubs Pod the other day a little bit, after he had the great catch in the home run to seal the game on Monday or on Sunday. That was Monday. I can't even keep track of days of the week. No, it was Tuesday. Tuesday's game. Wow. Okay. We had a graduation on Tuesday. We've had company here. It was, I don't even know what day of the week it is. Wednesday was a rain out. Yes. Tuesday's game. But let's take a look at his season. So last year as a rookie, he played in 123 games, 410 plate appearances. He did hit 10 home runs. He had a 24% strikeout rate, which is pretty good. He's a guy that swings at a lot of pitches. He chases a lot. And even coming through the minor leagues, he would go through stretches where he would have pretty high K rates. And that was something I know I was concerned about. His walk rate was low 5.1%. So again, he does not take a lot of pitches. So he's not going to get a lot of walks. A little concerned about the chase and the swing and miss. And last year he slashed 237, 286, 384, and had an 87 WRC plus. But for a guy with an 87 WRC plus, his FanGraphs WAR was 2.7. So he was almost a 3-win player while being 13%, while hitting 13% or producing runs at a rate 13% below league average. And that just shows you how high his floor is. So I want to talk about this team, and I'm often a stats-based podcast, bring up a lot of numbers, and I'll use some numbers in this podcast. But in this episode, I want to talk about feelings or perceptions of the game and of players. And so far this season, we're seeing something really special. We're seeing a really good team. We're seeing really good seasons from Seiya Suzuki, Pete Crow-Armstrong. Kyle Tucker's been battling a finger injury lately, so his power's down a little bit, but he's having a very good season. And I assume that finger will get healed up and he'll pick up where he started and be among the top producers in baseball. And after the past few seasons, this team that started so well in April against such a tough schedule won the season series against the Dodgers, won the season or tied the season series against the Padres. They won the season series against the Diamondbacks, who maybe aren't looking as good right now, but they were looking good earlier in the season. This team is fun to watch, and it's made me think back to other special seasons, special players. As a Cubs fan, I go back, I've talked about this, go back to basically Ryan Sandberg's rookie year. I just happened to start tuning in. The 1981 World Series is really my first significant baseball memory where I remember being interested, wanting to tune in, wanting to watch it on TV. And I found the Cubs the next season, and 1982, so 43, 44 years later, still here. And I'm not going anywhere. In that time, I've seen a number of Hall of Famers. I saw the end of Fergie Jenkins's career. I saw Rhino. I saw Andre Dawson. I saw Greg Maddux when he was a Cub. Just on and on and on. And Pete Crow-Armstrong is really making me kind of sit back and appreciate and think about just those moments in those seasons. And so this podcast is going to be kind of me walking through, I guess I'll say, the last 40 years of Cubs baseball. Yeah, I've seen a lot of podcasts doing the quarter century team. I think that's great. I have my thoughts, but I kind of missed the window, and it's not really what I do. I've enjoyed hearing everybody else's take. Bricks Behind the Ivy did a really good one. So just on this feed, if you haven't heard that, go check that out from Jeff Ragauskas. And there's so much going on that PCA is making me think, not so much in historical things. Like he's not having the best statistical season anybody's ever had. He's not even close to what Aaron Judge is doing right now this year. But he is just exuding greatness. And that's something that doesn't come along very often, really, for anybody. You get a few players, some special guys. I guess right now the Dodgers are kind of loaded. Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts are kind of those kind of players. But I wanted to go back and think through my time as a Cubs fan. So I'll say the last 40 years of my being a Cubs fan, and which players or seasons really stick out the most. And obviously you can just do a Hall of Fame rundown and say those guys. But I want to go more than that. I want to get into those moments and those seasons where a guy was just different and did something on a level maybe we hadn't seen before, maybe did some things I hadn't seen before. Maybe it was even just a flash. When I was talking about Pete Crow-Armstrong in the Cubs pod the other day, what we're seeing from him is really, really special. To combine that speed and athleticism, that amazing glove, his ability to get a read, find the right route super quickly on a ball, run it down. He covers so much ground that we are just getting spoiled. I saw a debate on Facebook, which is fine, about whether or not that catch the other night was actually a particularly great one. I said on CubsPod, I don't think it probably makes PCA's top 10 or 15 highlight reel defensive plays at this point, and he's only been really the Cubs center fielder for a year. But he is doing things at a level where we see a diving catch like that that's so big in that spot, and it just seems like, oh yeah, of course he was going to do that. And I think sometimes it's very easy to get in that mode. I see him start running, and I just kind of assume PC is going to find a way to get there. Sometimes he can't. Sometimes it's just too far away. But I think it's important sometimes to step back and really just kind of look at a guy and what he's doing and think about, in some sort of context, what that means and really enjoy it. I don't want to get to a point where, just another catch by PCA, without at least occasionally stepping back and thinking, man, he covered like half an outfield to get to that ball and he made it look easy. He just cruised to the wall and then was able to camp under and make a ho-hum catch against the wall 400 and something feet from batter. We just don't get to see this every day. As a Cubs fan, one of the things to tie back to the quarter century team, I think back in my entire time as a Cub fan and which player I would put at each position. Not a lot of choices at center field. There were a lot of young prospects that came up and didn't quite pan out. Corey Patterson, Felix P.A., come to mind immediately. Albert Almora was pretty highly regarded at one point, never really hit in the majors the way people thought he'd be able to. It's also not quite the defender he had the reputation for. But I look back, and for who I would put in that position, it's probably Dexter Fowler, because he had 2 really good seasons with the Cubs, and they were 2 of the best seasons in franchise history, and arguably the most important season in franchise history. He was the you go, we go guy, and led off Game 7 in the World Series with a home run. But that's not a lot of depth at center field. There are a lot of guys that were not that memorable. I remember the 2008 team, and that was before 2016. That was probably the best Cubs team in my lifetime. Maybe not my lifetime, maybe 1984 was there. But the best in a long time, and it was the deepest team. But honestly, right now, I know I could look it up, and I'm sure I would feel stupid not knowing it. But like right now, off the top of my head, I can't tell you who played center field for the 2008 Cubs team. Might have been Soriano out there. But if it wasn't him, I don't remember for sure who it was, which tells you something. You go through, you had Dexter Fowler. After that, there was some Albert Almora, John Jay for a while. We've had Christopher Morel out there. It's just, not that it's been a black hole of a position, but for PCA to fill it in and be such a presence, he's got that aura, and he's got that swagger. And what's really cool about him is he's 22, he's young. He carries himself with that swagger. He comes off as the cockiest baseball player in the world, just full confidence in his own ability. And then he'll do an interview and he's praising teammates and talking about how lucky he is to have guys around him that talk to him and feed him knowledge about the game. And he comes off as very humble in those situations. And sure, the players all get media training and stuff, but I think it's pretty indicative of who he is. He's a wildly confident player between the lines and seems like a decent dude outside the lines. Hopefully that's true. I certainly don't know Pete, but what I see, I like. So I want to think back to who stands out for me. And for me, Rhino's always going to be on that list, but honestly, I don't know that Rhino fits this category. So this category, I want to think about who was truly great, who did something we hadn't seen before. And Ryne Sandberg, absolutely deservedly a Hall of Famer. He was the best second baseman in baseball for a decade plus. His numbers speak for themselves. He's in Cooperstown for a reason, and he was a great baseball player. But outside of maybe his just emergence in 1984 and being the anchor on that team that finally broke through after 39 years of missing the postseason, that stuff matters, but I don't know that I can put him up with some of those historical seasons. The next one that comes to mind, I'm just kind of progressing through this temporarily, and then I'll get back to talking about some more of them, be Andre Dawson in 1987. So that's when he famously came to the Cubs after the awful turf in Montreal shredded his knees and he had injury after injury. He came to Cubs ownership and said, I want to play here. You sign me for what you think is fair for a year. And the Cubs got him for $500,000, which even in 1987 was an absolute steal. And even though the Cubs were atrocious that year, they finished in last place. Andre hit 49 home runs and tied Mark McGwire for the home run lead and won the National League MVP on the last place team. That's a pretty special season. Even that I have a hard time. Now that's closer to the mark of what I'm talking about than probably any individual season that Rhino had. Rhino in I think it was 91 had 40 home runs, which was huge at the time for a second baseman. We were coming out of the 80s where, the 36 to like 33 to 38 home runs would typically lead at least one of the leagues. There weren't many guys hitting 40. Nobody was hitting 50. And then we get to the 90s and we all know why, but the big home runs, which takes me to there's one I skipped over. I'll say Greg Maddux. Greg Maddux probably has to be in this discussion. He came up in 1986, made his first start. Made his first few starts. He was 21. He threw 250 innings at age 22. He had a couple seasons with sub-3 ERAs. And then in 1992, his last year with the Cubs, contract year, he posted a 2.18 ERA and won the MVP. And that was the beginning of really the Maddox we would see through the rest of the 90s and early 2000s. That vintage Atlanta Braves version of Greg Maddux, because Larry Himes is an absolute moron and did not sign him long term and just thought, we can go get a bunch of other guys cheaper and replace him. But I've already hit that topic in a different episode, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it now. But Greg Maddux is definitely on this list. The next one, really temporarily, is probably Kerry Wood. Kerry Wood is very deservedly in the Cubs Hall of Fame. He was inducted last year. He is one of my favorite Cubs of all time. And it goes back to that 20 strikeout game. He's a 20-year-old kid, can't buy a beer, comes up. He's facing the Astros at the time, who are absolutely loaded with Hall of Famers and all-star bats, top to bottom. Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio, Derek Bell, the Killer Bees, as they were called. And I know the weather was crappy, umpiring was different, all those things. He just locked them up. He made Biggio and Bagwell look like absolute fools multiple times and struck out 20. And that probably is the greatest baseball game ever pitched. There are some individual game score stats that kind of get into that and show that, that might be statistically the best game ever pitched, but he was absolutely dominant. And that set up, and this is really that kind of that aura factor I'm talking about. So PCA is must-watch TV. If you are just following the Cubs by listening to podcasts, by, checking out the game action, you're really doing yourself a disservice. I know we can't all watch all the games, but to watch him day in and day out, the way he plays center field, the way he approaches the bats, dude's just different. And it's really special to see. You can see on plays that don't make the highlight reel just how much ground he's able to cover in center field. They make it look easy, make it look effortless. And that's what Kerry Wood did. He had the big game, the big stats. He did have some really good seasons when he was able to stay healthy. But he was a guy it got to a point where, we had WGN. I think in that era, they were starting to split between, Comcast or whoever else was carrying the Cubs at that point. But you could still, I was living in other places. I was in Philadelphia in the Philadelphia area when he first came up. I lived in Oklahoma City. I've lived in Charlotte for almost 20 years. You could find the games, and it became very clear that Kerry Wood was a guy you didn't want to miss that start if you had a chance to watch the game, because you didn't know what he was going to do. Any given day, he could go out and potentially have another 20 strikeout game. And now he never did that again. He never threw a no-hitter. But he certainly had plenty of games where his stuff was on point, and he would go dominate the team for 7-8 innings. He was a bulldog. He would compete. He would go as deep into a game as coaches would allow. And it was really like watching him was different. There were at times better pitchers on staff. I would say Carlos Zambrano flirted with that kind of aura. And he really sort of had the aura, but he never captured it quite the way that Kerry Wood did. Although, Z did throw a no-hitter. So I don't think Zambrano quite makes it in this category, but Kerry Wood did. Like that was greatness. The obvious big answer is Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa was absolutely must-watch TV, really from late 96 on. And it was 1998 when he exploded and had the home run chase with Mark McGwire. But he was really starting to come on in 1997 before he had, I think it was a broken hand, had a big injury and missed a huge, maybe he missed the rest of the season. But when he went out, he missed most of what was left in the season. And I'm pretty sure that season he still put up 40-plus home runs. So he was starting to show it then. And then 1998 just took it next level. And he's even still with I know the steroid era, I believe Sammy juiced. I don't think that's any great surprise to anybody. I have had my issues with him over the years, but he's still the only person in Major League Baseball history to hit 60 home runs 3 times. Maybe Aaron Judge will do it. Maybe he won't. Barry Bonds never did it. McGwire never did it. None of those guys did it. Sammy did. Ironically, Sammy hit 60 home runs 3 times, never once won a home run title. So that's different. But he definitely had the aura. You had to see him. And you knew watching him at the time, especially before the whole steroid allegations started up. He had his other shortcomings. He didn't always have a reputation as being a great teammate. I heard mixed things about him off the field, but that's not what this is about. Like on the field, that was greatness, and you knew it, and you could see it. And we all had a chance, all of us who were watching in that era had the chance to kind of step back and think, this is special. I don't get to see this every day. And then after that, there's a bit of a gap. I'll kind of throw Derek Lee in here. It doesn't quite fit, but his 2005 season was tremendous. The power, the batting average, he put it all together, really showed the best of what he was capable of. And for that season, he was as good of a hitter all around as probably I've seen in my time with watching the Cubs. But it was just that one season. Then he had some injuries, and then he was getting older, and he still had plenty of good productive seasons, and hopefully he'll wind up in the Cubs Hall of Fame someday. But just quite get to that level. After that, it's kind of a black hole. Like the 2007, 2008 Cubs teams were very good, especially that 2008 team. But it was good because it was deep. They were kind of solid in every aspect of the game. They didn't really have Alfonso Soriano at the time the Cubs signed him was the highest paid player in baseball. So the Cubs did go out at that point under different ownership and sign a top free agent. But for all he got a bit of a bad rap from fans, but he did ultimately play to his contract, but he never put up that, oh my gosh, this is special. This is must see that, that people were hoping he would. And then after that, you had the down era. After that, I thought that Cubs window to win would extend further than 2008. I thought maybe they'd have a chance to get through 2009, 2010 before they really had to kind of tear it down and build a new core. But then that whole stretch leading up to 2015, there's no greatness in there. Those were awful teams losing 100 games a year. There were clearly some good players in there. We saw the emergence of Anthony Rizzo. Starlin Castro had some good years. There were good things in there. Nothing I would put on this kind of level. And then even the championship era team, it's hard to have one guy stand out. Chris Bryant had a couple of really good seasons. He obviously won the MVP in 2016, arguably had a better season in 2017. That's up there, but that's more really good player. It's great, but I never quite got that vibe from him either. Maybe I was just waiting for more, and maybe I didn't appreciate it the way I should. Rizzo, excellent baseball player, one of my all-time favorites, but he never put up video game numbers or had those moments where, like, wow, I may not ever see this again. Javi would give you those moments. Javi is kind of a lot of similarities between Javi and PCA, so I think it's highly ironic that they got traded for each other. Javi was electric. He came up with the ability to do everything. Elite defensively, super fast, tons of raw power. And there were times where it was special like PCA. I think over time, we got to see some of it. Could have won MVP in 2018. Had a really good season in 2019 again before he kind of faded. He wasn't as good towards the end of his time with the Cubs. Has not been good in Detroit until this season. He's rejuvenated himself now. But he's a guy that has to be in the discussion as well. But probably the biggest one from that era is Jake Arrieta. The Cubs had John Lester. He was great. Kyle Hendricks, love him. I've talked about him a lot on this podcast. Jake Arrieta from midseason 2015 to midseason 2016 is about as good a pitcher as I have ever seen. I'm going to go bring up his splits here, because he was basically unhittable for a calendar year. So I'm bringing up his Fangraphs page here. Just looking at the full seasons for those years. 2015, he had a 177 ERA. In 2016, he had 310. Now, the 310 came about because he was kind of rough the second half of the season. But if I do a splits tool and I go I'll just go July 1 to July 1. I don't know what's going on with my internet today. It is super slow. So from July 1st, 2015 to July 1st, 2016, basically the second half of 2015, first half of 2016. At the end of 2015, he put up an 0.89 ERA in the second half of that season. So when the Cubs went on that tear and made the playoffs, made the run in October before losing to the Mets, he was untouchable. He didn't give up anything. During that time, he gave up 69 hits. Nice. 1 triple. He only gave up 13 runs in 18 games. Just mind-blowing. He walked 25 and struck out 133. It's nuts. Hitters, slashed 153, 205, 211 against him. It's insane. In 2016, he wasn't quite as good, but the first half of that season, he was 2.10 ERA. Walked 40, struck out 111, and guys were slashing 178, 264, 251. That as a pitcher is didn't quite have the K domination that Kerry Wood did. Didn't have that kind of almost like Nolan Ryan kind of magic and mystique. But when he was going, he was still dominating, getting a lot of Ks, and that's probably the most fun stretch of pitching I've seen from anybody, save maybe Maddox, but it might have even been more fun than Maddox for no other reason than I was older and better able to appreciate it. But since, whether you talk about Javi or Jake Arrieta, it's kind of been nothing. And coming into the season, if you would have told me that there was going to be true greatness I would have to see every single day, my first thought, I would have hoped for a PCA, but I would have thought it's probably still too soon. I would have thought Kyle Tucker. And Kyle Tucker's been very good, but he has not been that level. And I would just say, enjoy this team for what it is. I see a lot of talk on social media about who are they going to trade for? What starting pitcher should they go after? That's great. We will have plenty of time to talk about that. We're almost getting to July. The season is almost half over. And there's a lot of talk about Kyle Tucker. Is he going to be re-signed? Who would the Cubs go after in free agency in the offseason? Those are all valid topics. I will talk about them. Everybody on this channel will talk about them. Everybody in baseball will talk about those things. But right now, I would implore you to appreciate the fact that this is a very good baseball team, playing very good baseball consistently night in, night out. When I see social media get fired up right now, it's not because they've lost 8 out of 10 or haven't scored a run in 2 weeks like the last 2 seasons. It's because they've had a game and a half where they put together 3 runs. And as frustrating as that can be, we're getting spoiled, and I just wanted to appreciate it. I watch baseball because I love it. I've always loved the game. I find joy in watching it. I find joy in following it. I find joy in talking about it, which is why I do this show. This is a season to find joy in. I don't know how it's going to end. The wheels could fall off tomorrow. I remember the 1985 Cubs were about this point in June. I think they had a 6-game lead in the division, cruising after the 1984 season. It looked like, my gosh, they're might be in the playoffs again. And then the entire starting rotation went on the injured list in the span of 3 weeks. And that season completely derailed. And then, it would be another few seasons before the Cubs would win again. We know as Cubs fans, these things don't always come around a lot. I went through some of the guys that I talked about that felt like kind of true greatness, even if it was a flash for me. And in 40 years, I came up with maybe Rhino's 84 season. I came up with maybe Andre Dawson's 1987 season. There was Greg Maddux for sure. Sammy Sosa for sure. Kerry Wood gave us some of that. I don't think Mark Grace ever did. Very good player. Correctly in the Cubs Hall of Fame. Definitely correctly not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But Kerry and Sammy, maybe the Derek Lee season. Maybe Chris Bryant. Probably Javi Baez. Definitely Jake Arrieta. And now probably PCA. These kinds of things don't come around very often. PCA could get hurt. I think today's game is starting as I'm wrapping up this podcast. And he could get hurt today and it could change the trajectory of his career. But we are seeing greatness right now. So definitely I would encourage you, take the time, appreciate it, watch it when you can, watch as much of it as you can. This team feels special right now, and I don't know how the season's going to go. They're already facing a lot of injuries. If they pile on some more, it could go downhill fast. But this team has shown a lot of resilience. They are deep. We'll continue to talk about what Jed did last offseason. Once we hit the All-Star break or just after, I'll get Sarah Sanchez back, and we'll talk about, revisit the episode where we redid Jed's offseason and kind of compare what Jed did to what we had proposed and kind of see how we feel right now. Who was right? There are a lot of things right now I would have to say that Jed, while I still might have gone in different directions, and those other directions could have wound up being better in some ways. It's hard to argue a lot with what Jed's done this offseason. This is a very good baseball team. They've been able to weather a lot of injuries so far, and they're hanging in. The offense looks great. And some of the offense was not a matter of bringing guys in. Now, they went out and made the trade for Kyle Tucker, but it's showing faith that Dansby and Nico were going to rebound from last year. It's a little bit of faith that Crow-Armstrong is going to continue to grow into the position, that Ian Happ would continue to do what he does, and Matt Shaw could emerge and play third base. There's a lot there to like, a lot there to appreciate, and Cubs baseball is here every day. It's a gift. Enjoy it. Especially after the last few seasons. I can't remember having this much fun watching baseball since probably the 2018 team. And that one ended bitterly with the wild card game loss, the game 163 loss to the Brewers to put the Cubs in the wild card game. But that was a 95-win baseball team, and that's about where the Cubs are right now. They have played a very tough schedule, and they're on pace right now to win 99 games. Actually, I didn't look decimal points. Maybe they're basically playing like a 99 or 100 win team pace right now. Are they going to sustain that? Probably not. I don't really see this team as a 100-win team. But I wouldn't have had them at 45 wins on June 19th either. So enjoy the greatness. Watch wherever you can and just enjoy Pete Crow-Armstrong. Thank you for joining me today. If you like this episode, please drop a rating and a review wherever it is you get your podcasts, and share the episode with a friend. Just a few seconds from you gives us great feedback and helps other Cub fans find the show. You can find me on Twitter or X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, and YouTube, all at CubsPS Plus. And check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/BleacherBunch to help support all of our shows. As always, the theme music for this podcast is Prospect Park West by Jerry McCoy. This is Mike Waller, host of the CubsPS Plus podcast. Every day with Cubs baseball or talking about Cubs baseball is a great day. Go Cubs!